Good afternoon, everyone. It is August 14th, Monday, and it's time for the PM edition of C2-A-Days from Campus to Canton. I am Nicholas Ian Allen and wanted to offer a quick rundown of some afternoon notes following up a pretty packed morning show where we offered a lot of observations and reports, insights on a large number of scrimmages that occurred over the weekend. Some notes that we did not get to this morning we'll hit on, plus a few other items that we might have come across over the course of Monday throughout the day. Starting in Washington, and a name that we've mentioned often over the first couple of weeks of fall camp, Michael Penix Jr. is reportedly back on the practice field. Mike Vorel of the Seattle Times noted that though he received limited reps for the for 3 consecutive practices due to a mild soreness in his throwing arm, Michael Penix Jr. took the majority of first-team snaps on Saturday during the scrimmage, according to head coach Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer also singled out wide receiver Denzel Boston, who we mentioned before, and running back Daniel Ngata, who we haven't mentioned, as strong performers during the scrimmage on Saturday. At Arizona State, following up a note from earlier, quarterback Drew Pine, the transfer from Notre Dame, who is in the mix to start for the Sun Devils. According to head coach Kenny Dillingham, there's currently no timetable for his return from that minor hamstring tear that Pine suffered over the weekend. That's according to Jake Seymour of Sun Devil Source. With Pine sidelined for an undetermined amount of time, true freshman quarterback Jaden Rashada impressed and should benefit from the extra reps. Too early to say if Rashada will be able to close ground on Trenton Bourgo, who now, with Pine being sidelined, seems like a heavy favorite to start in week one. But Rashada, of course, highly talented, highly recruited, and according to Dillingham, made some NFL throws in the most recent practice. So great opportunity for him to show what he can do in an expanded number of reps, but of course, hoping that Pine is back and fully healthy quickly. At Oregon State, Brennan Slaughter of Beaver's Edge, the rival site, noted 3 things that he learned over the weekend for the Beavs. DJ Uiagalelei looks like the number 1 quarterback, according to Slaughter. Not a big surprise, but it seems that every opportunity the beat reporters get to observe practice, Uiagalelei looks more and more like the likely starter for Oregon State. Slaughter called DJU cool and confident and said compared to Ben Branson and Aiden Childs, he's simply the most consistent quarterback and looks like the best option. So barring something drastic, Slaughter said that he would be shocked if DJU isn't the starting quarterback come the San Jose State game. At Northern Illinois, the Huskies team site had a write-up about their weekend scrimmage. Mentioned Rocky Lombardi, who is back and fully healthy. Head coach Thomas Hammock said that I thought Rocky executed at a high level. He's out there running around, moving around, doing things at the quarterback position and feels very comfortable. I thought some guys made plays on the perimeter. They got to the right spots, even in a tough 3rd and long situations. Then I like the backs. I thought the guys ran physical and they ran downhill. 2 of the players who were noted as having big days were Trayvon Rudolph, who, of course, missed all of last season with an injury. He connected with Lombardi on a touchdown during a red zone period. Casper Ruckwitz also had a big day, as did Kayshawn Pimpkin according to Hammock. So, good news that Lombardi is going to be fully healthy for, I believe, his seventh year in college. Only played 4 games last season in Northern Illinois. Significantly underperformed with him on the sidelines. Really disappointing coming off the MAC championship the previous year. So, with Lombardi and Rudolph back and healthy and operating at a high level, it sounds like in fall camp. Would expect that NIU will be back in the mix this fall. At Navy, Bill Wagner of the Capitals that had a couple of pieces out today that discussed the quarterback situation. It sounds like Navy is likely to play multiple quarterbacks in the opener against Notre Dame. We've discussed a little bit coming into the season that Blake Horvath was in the mix to perhaps unseat Ty Lavatai as the starting quarterback for the midshipmen. However, situation with classes has limited Horvath and a couple of others to only being able to practice once a week, it sounds like. So Lavatai is now currently expected to be the primary signal caller, it sounds like, in week 1. We'll see if that will carry over through the rest of the season. But it sounds like, according to offensive coordinator Grant Chestnut, who's quoted as saying, "I would expect to be playing 2 quarterbacks. I don't mind saying that publicly right now." Chestnut said on Saturday, according to Bill Wagner, "I feel like both guys are progressing in a good direction, and I think at the moment they can both help our football team. Also, who winds up starting, we're still battling that out." In another piece, Wagner quoted quarterback coach Ivan Jasper, who mentioned Xavier Arline, who's also been a starter for the midshipmen before, also plays lacrosse at Navy and was injured earlier this spring. A quote that caught my eye from Jasper was that, quote, "X doesn't want to spend his entire senior season watching. We have to find a way to get him on the field and the ball in his hands because he's a great athlete and a great runner. We have to take advantage of that. We can't waste that." Xavier Arline is certainly well versed in running the triple option. Has had some big running plays in the past. Me somewhat speculating here. Wonder if he might have an opportunity to play another position, potentially wide receiver, because Bill Wagner did notice, or did note, I should say, that sophomore receiver Nathan Kent, who is one of the fastest players at the Naval Academy, is also a sprinter for the track team. Has missed a good chunk of preseason camp with a knee injury that he sustained reportedly in the second practice. So it doesn't sound like it's going to be a season-long situation for Kent, but I believe the timetable was mentioned as being 4 to 6 weeks, which would likely sideline him for the first couple of games. And if that's the case, perhaps it's a little too late for our line to really get in the mix for significant playing time in another position early on. But don't be surprised if we do try to, or if we do have an opportunity to see our line on the field somewhere else other than quarterback, especially if Lavatai and Horvath are competing neck and neck for those signal calling duties. At Oklahoma State, a quick rundown of the projected depth chart updated by McLean Baxley of Go Pokes 247. He mentioned that the top 2 running backs as of now appear to be Jaden Nixon and Ollie Gordon II. And kind of a interesting observation from Baxley, because we've mentioned in previous editions of C2-A-Days that it seemed like Ollie Gordon was really slipping down the projected depth chart. But reading from Baxley's report, he says, "Hand up, I was wrong about not having Gordon in my 2 deep. At practice, both he and Nixon were taking handoffs from perspective of starting quarterback Alan Bowman." Asked about the quarterback room during the scrimmage, Gundy mentioned that there had been some injuries, but everyone looked good. There seems to be some depth. Elijah Collins was apparently banged up, but should be back this week, middle of this week, it sounds like. According to Gundy, says, knock on wood, they're all going to be up and running here middle of the week. They're doing good. It's very similar to the quarterback situation. They're all doing pretty good, and all of them have things that they need to work on. Baxley, I should say, mentioned his observation of the wide receiver groupings. At the X receiver, Jaden Bray and Leon Johnson III seem to be number one and number two. At the Y receiver position, it's Brennan Presley, followed up by Jalen Pope. At the Z receiver, Dejon Stribling and Talon Shetron. And at the H, Blaine Green and Rashad Owens are listed in that order. At San Jose State, Andrew Pang of Inside the Spartans gave a follow-up to the weekend's scrimmage and practices, and we've been trying to figure out what is exactly going on with Justin Lockhart. Is he practicing? Is he not? We've mentioned that he missed time earlier in spring camp with an illness of some sort. He also was spotted sitting out one practice with a cast on his hand. According to Pang, he didn't give a specific update, but says that Lockhart has sat out much of fall camp due to an injury wearing a cast on his arm, so younger players will have to step up. On Saturday, redshirt sophomore Brandon Alvarez made some impressive deep catches, indicating that he could work his way into the two deep alongside guys like Charles Ross, Malachi Miller, Nick Nash, the former quarterback, as well. So don't have a specific note as to whether or not Lockhart is nearing 100%, what his situation may be for the week 0 game against USC, but it sounds like he's at least limited, and some other younger receivers are perhaps getting an opportunity to show what they can do and work their way up the depth chart. At Arkansas, some unfortunate injury clarification. Sam Mbake, who we've mentioned multiple times as having practiced primarily with the number ones in most reports. According to Mason Choate of Hogbeat, Mbake suffered a knee injury during the scrimmage on Saturday that will result in him missing the 2023 season. At Texas State, Kev Cardello of the Statesman and the Win Now or Get Bent podcast tweeted out or commented on a Texas State highlight tweet that showed wide receiver Drew Donnelly making a big play, and Cardello tweeted, "Another day, another Drew Donnelly highlight. He switched from the left side to the right in camp." Offensive coordinator Mac Leftwich said that has made a big difference. So a lot of folks are very, very curious who will be among the primary receivers for Texas State in 2023. That new coaching staff put up just huge numbers at Incarnate Word at the FCS level. And though a lot of our discussion has centered on, TJ Finley and Malik Hornsby competing for the quarterback job, it seems likely whoever wins that competition will be in line for a productive season. And as a result, wide receivers likely to be highly productive as well. And it sounds like Donnelly is consistently making highlight-worthy plays in fall camp thus far. At Vanderbilt, kind of an interesting observation from Aria Gerson of the Tennessean. There had been a lot of positive reports about true freshman running back Cedric Alexander coming out of spring practice and entering the summer and fall camp. A lot of folks, somewhat understandably, based on what we had seen and read in the spring, expected Alexander to potentially start for the Commodores as early as week 0, their game against Hawaii. But according to Gerson, who was there for an interview with head coach Clark Lee over the weekend, said that Lee hopes to use a rotation of 3 running backs, and that 2 will be Patrick Smith and Chase Gillespie. The front runners for the third are Alexander and AJ Newberry. So Gerson pointed out that Newberry has more big play potential, but that Alexander is more consistent at present. So perhaps a little bit of a disappointing note for folks that expected the true freshman to step in and immediately be a full-time starter there at Vanderbilt. Sounds like multiple running backs, regardless of how it shakes out, are going to be getting a decent workload early in the season. And it does seem, at least according to Gerson's tweet earlier, that Alexander is currently in third at best at the pecking order, behind Smith and Gillespie. At Florida, Kevin Brockway of the Gainesville Sun noted that backup quarterback Jack Miller did not practice on Saturday. But good news, a couple of projected starters, cornerback Jason Marshall Jr. and offensive lineman Lindell Hudson, were back to full speed. A fun piece from Mike Grimala of the Las Vegas Sun about Jacob DeJesus, the star standout of spring practices for the Rebels, is hoping to carry that over into the fall. And a few notes and quotes in the piece that caught my eye. One from defensive back Jure Williams said that Jacob DeJesus is, quote, the quickest wide receiver I've ever seen. The piece in the piece, Grimala noted that DeJesus has mostly worked in the slot, but can also line up wide, should factor in on jet sweeps and end rounds, and said that it was very rare in the first week of camp where the first team offense would go more than a snap or two without getting DeJesus involved in some way. DeJesus himself was quoted as mentioned he was really building a rapport with starting quarterback Doug Brumfield. Said, quote, I definitely feel like me and Doug have been getting a good rhythm together. At first in the spring, things were a little shaky, like we weren't on the same page all the time. Part of it had to do with me and my learning experience during the spring. But in the fall, since we've been working a ton together and getting more reps in together, I feel like we've got a rhythm going. He's really been connecting with me and all the other receivers. So there's a lot of excitement about that UNLV offense with Brennan Marion calling the plays now. The go-go offense was a ton of fun earlier in his career at Howard and William & Mary, both at the FCS level. But of course, Marion has since been places like Hawaii, where he was involved in the designing the offense with G.J. Kinney of now Texas State. And then most recently was at Texas. At Iowa State, defensive lineman Isaiah Lee, who we mentioned earlier was charged in the ongoing gambling investigation, has now left the program. That is according to the Des Moines Register. Lee was a returning starter, and apparently will not play for the Cyclones this fall. Syracuse added former Nebraska starting safety Miles Farmer through the transfer portal. Farmer was I believe the second leading tackler for the Cornhuskers in 2022. Perhaps a little late for him to step in and immediately start for the Orange, but would expect, as experienced as he is, that we will see Farmer contributing sooner rather than later once the season starts. And then one final note, I always like to mention when we read a quote or some sort of insight that could give us a window into the play calling philosophy of a team or its offense especially. But LSU wide receiver Chris Helton, who was one of the standouts of the Tigers scrimmage over the weekend, Matthew Brune of Bengal Tiger on 3 tweeted that Hilton says last year they could have taken more deep shots, but this year Mike Denbrock is going to call more shot plays that the wide receivers just have to make plays. So, saying an offense is going to take more shots down the field is pretty similar to a defense saying they're going to be more aggressive, and so and so is in the best shape of his life in fall camp. You never really know how much to read into it, but at LSU, it sounds like the receivers, especially those staying healthy, are in the potential or in the position to potentially help make more big plays this year. So we will certainly keep an eye on whether or not Jaden Daniels and that LSU offense is going to be taking more shots down the field this season. So that will do it for us this afternoon. We will be back in the AM on Tuesday, August 15th for C2-A-Days. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen of Campus to Canton, and we very much appreciate your support. If you are interested in seeing how these notes that we come across, how they impact our team projections, player projections, our projected depth charts, please do check out the C2C Winning Edge tier. Get access to our team profiles, which have projected depth charts for all 133 FBS teams, projected point spreads for every game. We also are putting the final touches on our player stat projections, but have quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end stat projections for over 100 teams already accessible, and we'll be finishing up the final few this week. So check us out, campustocanton.com for more information. You can, of course, reach out to me as well at CFB Winning Edge on Twitter. And until tomorrow, hope everyone has a great evening, and we will see you tomorrow for the AM edition of C2-A-Days.